So desired dough temperature varies for the style of dough that you're making, but what you're aiming for is for the type of dough you're making to have the dough be a certain temperature as it goes into bulk ferment. Because depending on the style of dough, there's sort of like an ideal temperature range for fermentation. So for wheat doughs like this, I think it's somewhere, I think for a mostly white wheat dough, it's like 74 to 6 degrees. I think for a higher whole grain dough, like a whole wheat, it's more like 77, 78 degrees. And when you start getting into like the 100% rise, it's in the low 80s, like 82, 83 degrees. So you can't really do too much about your flour temperature. You can't really do too much about the room temperature. Your pre-ferment might be a certain temperature, but what you can easily control is your water temperature. So there's a formula that you can calculate. You can take the temperature of your pre-ferment, you know your room temperature, you can stick a thermometer in your flour if you want, and you can run it through a simple calculation to tell you what your water temperature needs to be in order to get your ending dough temperature. And it's a bit of an approximation, but it's amazing how often it works to get you where you need to be. And then there are some other considerations that happen depending on whether you're hand mixing or using a machine. Because if you're using a machine to mix, every time there's a revolution of that hook going around the bowl, it creates friction. Friction creates heat. So you can have a dough really warm up during a mixing period. So you kind of have to, it's a bit of trial and error with your mixer, both at the start of mix, at the end of the mix. You can take temperatures and see how much your dough is warming up from beginning to end for that dough, and then you know what your friction factor is and how much the dough is heating up from the mixer. You know, a wet dough might not heat up as much as a stiff dough, or, you know, it just all depends on the recipe and the consistency of the dough and how long you're actually mixing it. When you're hand mixing, you know, you have a cooling off period with the dough because, like, we just mixed the 75% whole wheat and now it's sitting here and it's resting at room temperature. It's cooling all the while, especially when we're doing these small batches. They tend to cool faster, and you don't get heat from a friction factor because you're just hand mixing. It's very gentle. So I always tend to go warmer with my water temperature when I'm hand mixing. So, because the mixing time is longer and there's longer time for the dough to cool down, and you just don't have that additional friction from using a machine.
So for today, with what you think is happening in this room, what we try to get the water temperature to, and all of this stuff might all sound very complicated. Because I'm using a big mixer, I'm not so concerned about the desired dough temperature, because my mixer performance of how you want the...
Yeah, it's how the yeast, how it feeds, how it grows, how it reproduces, produces gas. There's lactic acid bacteria in the dough that are doing things as well, and they have their own little temperature zone. So the experts, the people who write bread books and do bread theory and stuff, have determined that there's an optimum range to make it. All those things that coexist in the dough, the yeast, the lab bacteria, make everybody happy and work together.